Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for another GRIDtalk session. This session is, call it from feature to role, your AI assistant. And it just kind of reflects a bit of thinking that we've been doing as a kind of platform provider, but also what we see sort of the kind of next shift in AI, which is rather than discussing or sort of introducing just additional kind of features, is how do you actually evolve AI to become more of a role within your organization. So let's move on. For those that are new to MethodGrid or new to GRIDtalk, we run GRIDtalk just as a monthly series where we just focus on sharing best practice research that we come across. We run it monthly and we do a live event each year. And I think this GRIDtalk is just to sort of prep the session in July, which is focused on AI and the future of work. Obviously, for those that don't know me, I think most of you do, but I'm Pip Morpeth. I'm the CEO for MethodGrid. Mark, do you want to do a quick intro?
Yes, hello everyone. I'm Mark. I'm a senior developer here at MethodGrid, also a postgrad researcher at Durham University. So I'm kind of here to fill in the technical AI details as we go.
keep me in check. So yeah, for this session, what we thought we'd do is just explain from a first. Let's explain it from a kind of AI perspective, from a platform's perspective, and just how we see the world. And I think it's important you understand how we see the world and how we see that shaping and changing the destination of the platform. But what we also thought we would do is try and bring the kind of concept of, okay, well, if we need to start thinking about AI as a role, well, how do you then go about breaking that down, bringing it to life? So. And we thought we'd just use this session focused on what do we see the kind of AI assistant for project delivery and all the things that it can do. And then just obviously take some time just for Q&A just at the end, just about your thoughts. Okay. Right. So the first bit, I'll bring it up big first and then we'll get rid of it. But this is what we were just, as a business, as a kind of platform business, we were thinking, okay, well, look, and obviously we're kind of in the work management, project management space. And I think if you look back to kind of 22 to where we are now, I think the majority of AI features that are introduced are mainly, we have this platform, how do we add AI into the platform as a feature, and we have this bit of functionality that does this. How do we add AI in to do that? And I think broadly, the majority of other platforms in sort of our world and in the environment have been on that journey. And the access to AI for broadly most companies or most clients has been accessing AI through their kind of SaaS platforms or the platforms that they use. I think what we kind of paused on is to say, well, look, we're going to continue to keep adding feature, but I think the next kind of stage in evolution would be, well, actually, rather than just AI being like a bolt-on, what we think is if you have a particular platform, AI within that platform is going to start to become more and more intelligent. And that's kind of phrase we came up with, there'll be kind of intelligent work systems, i.e., okay, AI operates within the boundary of the platform, but it has access to more and more data within the platform, and it is providing kind of intelligent contextual decisions that help you use that platform broadly in a role. But we think obviously that role is going to be limited based on the boundary set by the platform. I think that's broadly where I think most SaaS providers are today and platform providers are today, is how can we make AI more intelligent within our platform? the bit that we wanted to think on it and think a bit further forward, mainly like on the more, I think, Mark, we were talking about it before, like the horizon we kind of look for is a kind of 2 to 3 year horizon now, especially with how fast AI is advancing. But what we definitely see is actually probably a greater shift to more intelligent decisioning systems. But that's more where actually AI isn't just bound by the system boundary within the platform. What clients are going to want is actually, I want my AI role to be able to talk to MethodGrid. I want it to talk to Procore. I want it to talk to Risk Connect. I want it to be able to connect and talk to different systems, have access to different data, and support our users in a much broader agnostic role sense, rather than just being kind of limited by a kind of system boundary.
Yeah, because I think, yeah, that's the key point that you've just sort of touched on there. That, I mean, for, currently and for the next year or so, we're still developing AI features within the app. And, within the dev team, we're very proud of the AI features we have. But yeah, they're limited by the knowledge and the information that the platform itself has. And yeah, I think you're absolutely right that what people are going to expect and what's going to start happening is these AI, they need to be making decisions, or they need to be enabling people to make decisions based on data from a wide range of systems that aren't just bound within one platform.
Yeah, I think for us, our kind of sort of key reflection point is, look, whilst we'll continue to kind of add features and functionality that kind of support both, well, what's a feature and a kind of migration to become a kind of intelligent system, we also need to build features that will allow the platform to operate as part of a kind of intelligent kind of decisioning system.
Yeah. How do we make MethodGrid part of a wider AI ecosystem that other intelligent systems can talk to?
Yeah, and I think I know we drew this when we drew this diagram. It's kind of, it looks very linear, and I think we wrote it in the paper as well. It was that we don't see this as linear. I think it's just helpful, kind of a natural progression. But I think what we will see is people that are exploring kind of, actually, we're already kind of got intelligent decisioning system. It doesn't have everything yet, but it's got this aspect of it, and I think there also will be a balance between, well, look, sometimes we're just deploying a feature because it is a bolt-on and it's a nice way of using AI. But then I think there are actually some of the features or constructs that we're building within the platform are much more, actually, that's kind of more intelligent decisioning system feature, rather than just okay, that's a bit of language model integration that helps you build a dashboard and a widget really quickly. That's kind of feature-esque versus the kind of intelligent decisioning functions and features.
I think there's an element of chicken and egg about it as well, right? That if we want a platform that can integrate with your own AI agent, well, you need to build the AI agent to talk to our platform. Then we need to build the platform to be able to talk to your AI agent. It's kind of, there's an element of chicken and egg about, we need to do this in order for you to do that, but also you need to do that in order for us to do this. So yeah, I think you're right. It'll be a sort of gradual change that doesn't. Yeah, it's not linear as this slide suggests.
I think, and we definitely see the transition. Whereas probably platforms now are probably influencing it more. I think on the right-hand side, that intelligent decisioning system, I think what we're going to see is more clients taking more ownership of AI and the roles and how AI functions within the organization. Because essentially, it will probably be what differentiates them in the market. The way that agents operate and the way they perform is going to be the kind of, well, actually, we've got genuine IP in how these roles perform and perform our services and our processes.
Yeah, I think from our point of view, it's increasingly we're going to be having conversations with clients or potential clients where they're going to come to us and say, it's not just going to be, does your platform have these features? It's, can your platform talk to my AI agents that I already have that can talk to all these other systems?
I'll bring this up. So what we then started to think about is, okay, well, look, it's AI as a feature is pretty simple, because that's kind of platform. But then we were thinking, okay, well, what do you need to put in place to start constructing AI as a role? And what we wanted to try and map out was, well, what's the kind of core system architecture that you're going to need to kind of build or have in place in order to start building kind of that intelligent decisioning system. And look, we totally recognize that there are, you'll start to see that there's agent tech out there like Make and NAN. There's platforms that people are building, which are building sort of specific transactional services that AI is performing. The one that we were kind of more interested in is, okay, well, what's going to be, how do you use AI for the kind of high value, complex human processes that require AI humans, and it has to be kind of a like conversation interface about how you're orchestrating really complex high value process. How we deliver projects, how we deliver services doesn't feel like you can automate that in a kind of single agent transaction. It feels like it's going to need to be multi-agent, but also what's critical is the role and the relationship between the human and the AI assistant, and how they interact and how they interact with teams.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we don't want to give the impression that when we talk about AI agents talking to other AI agents, that what we're imagining is a very sort of opaque, completely automated, the AI is just making decisions with no kind of oversight, with no kind of human intervention. You know, all of this is, you know, I mean, I'm jumping ahead to the last point on this slide here, but the human in the loop interface of, you can see what other agents is your AI talking to, what information is it getting from them, what is it asking them to do, how is it coming to the decisions that it's coming to, and obviously all the necessary kind of manual sign off and verification of anything the AI is producing.
Yeah, I mean, so look, I think the first one we were going to talk about, like the process engine, and when we were talking about the process engine, we think there's got to be something that is bounding both the human and the AI in what the process is, like the end to end, left to right. How are we going to go deliver this project left to right? There has to be something that is basically framing that and bounding it, for the AI to kind of understand it, but also for the kind of human to see it and interact with it and have dialogue about, well, how do we see that process shaping up and taking place? And I think for us, when we look at method grid, for us, that feels like a really strong area where we think actually the kind of playbook concept would be a good solution for the process engine, given that it's kind of, again, being quite visual, mapping it out, the kind of visual playbook, but also then kind of merging kind of knowledge and allowing AI to interact with it and interface with it and say, well, like, by the way, I think this is why I've done X and why I've done Y, and basically using the playbook as a way of facilitating that process conversation between the user and the machine, basically. And I think this is the other concept, probably puts method grid clients in a easier step to migrate to it. I can't see a world where the kind of, we have this one process, it's written down static, we want people to follow it. I can't see that surviving like 2 or 3 years. I think we're going to have to evolve, or AI will help us evolve to it, where, you know, AI will chat to us, have a few questions. Look, what's your risk rating? Tell me a bit more about your project. Okay, great, I understand X, Y, and Z. And then it's going to try and then dynamically go, by the way, okay, you're kind of, you need these stages, you need these decision gates, you need these additional deliverables. But it's basically helping the user kind of codify and define that kind of way of working in that project lifecycle, but dynamically. And I can't see a static SharePoint sort of meeting the kind of requirements for that.
Yeah, and I think sort of that's sort of the core of method grid, right? It's this kind of, tension almost, or kind of balance between the structured, these are the steps you need to do, these are the common processes that all of our projects have, but then understanding the context is different for each individual project, and there's going to be some bits of it that need to be refined per project, essentially, or based on circumstances.
Was it you did a little prototype on that where I think we were doing project classification using AI, and then AI, as you cloned the playbook, AI had started to kind of adjust and dynamically add additional elements, deliverables.
Yeah. So we had, I mean, I'd maybe call it a prototype, it's slightly generous. It was sort of an initial proof of concept, certainly. It was around sort of Rail project is what we were playing around with, where we had sort of Rail kind of upgrade playbook, and then it was around having a conversation with the AI when you're deploying it for a specific project, of giving it more context about the project. I think there were, if we said to it, this is a project that is happening in some remote mountain up in Scotland versus this other project that's right in the middle of central London, it would be able to intelligently look at the project and go, okay, this element isn't necessary for this one, or there's going to be some logistical challenges for this one that's in the middle of nowhere that we need to consider. There's bigger risks to, say, maintaining service levels within the central London one. And it was exactly that. It was taking not a complete blank page. It was taking the existing structure and the existing kind of regulations and gates and all the rest of it that you have, and tweaking it for the context of an individual project.
But I think for me, that's for what I think the future of work's going to look like, where actually work will, using AI, and will start to be dynamically shaped, and you will have access to an assistant helping you do that. I think the next bit, the kind of intelligent agent, and I think what we said is, look, we don't see this as just one agent. I think clearly it comes back to your point, Mark, about the human in the loop interface. You kind of want to make sure that staff have, the worst case, I'm talking to this agent and this system, talking to that agent and that system. It's kind of like, you probably just get frustrated. Why aren't they talking to each other? I think the intelligent agent is, okay, we've built specific agents that are performing particular roles, and based on the interaction that I have with the user, there's something that's working out and saying, well, actually, I'm going to push and route that through to that agent to get that response, and then feed it back to the user. I think we'll come on to probably that in a bit more detail. We've had a go at what we think is what's the kind of capital project delivery agent to help us kind of build out future prototypes for that.
Yeah, I think it's about, I mean, this is sort of the key point, you've already mentioned it, but it's about ownership, right, of the AI model. If you have your own AI model and it knows about these other systems, it knows what information it can get from these different systems, it knows what it can ask these different systems to do for you, and then it can kind of form its own plan of, I need to get this information from this system, I then need to ask this other system to do this, and it can keep you in the loop of all of those steps as it's going through.
I think that's kind of that kind of orchestration logic layer as well, which I think clients are going to have to work through, which is, okay, I think we're used to humans triggering AI. I give you a prompt and I want you to do something. I think naturally what we will start to see is, okay, somebody's created a change request in like the CDE, or they created something in Procore, I've raised a change here. Actually, that then signals and creates other kind of agents to interact and respond to it, and then respond to users. Or potentially you'll start to see patterns in data that will be triggering agents to surface that to users. And I think that kind of orchestration and logic layer is going to be quite key, because I think we're going to evolve beyond just the human chatting with AI and interacting with it to much more that agents are independent and being triggered by different trigger points in applications or specific data conditions.
Yeah, like I say, I think those, as we kind of move to this multi-agent kind of system, the thing that one AI agent is reacting to might have happened in a completely different system. An AI in one system might just sort of broadcast, this is a change that has happened, and then an AI in a completely different system might pick that up and go, okay, that means I now need to kick in and do this other thing in the system I'm responsible for.
Yeah. And then the integration sort of data fabric. I think I think everyone knows like the core project data challenge, like that you want kind of consistent data captured in a core way. But I think also you look at most like capital project delivery environments, there's kind of, oh, Bentley's got this data set in kind of requirements, hazards, risks, Procore, CDE's got all of this, the kind of design documentation, Risk Connect's got all our risks, Method Grid's got the assurance and the kind of knowledge. I think it's going to be probably less about what the system actually is, but it's really how good you are at basically pushing that into a kind of common fabric of data that AI can have access to, because I think that will essentially limit and determine just how much it can actually do, especially if you kind of want machine learning put on that data set to kind of identify patterns, and then have machine learning kind of push and into the orchestration layer and actually saying, by the way, I've detected this pattern, I think you need to do something, agent. I don't know, the change control agent. I think I've detected an unscheduled change. I think you should investigate it.
Yeah, I think as well, data not just the data that your kind of AI agent has access to, but data that you own as well. Rather than the data living in each of these individual platforms, the data living with you that your AI has access to, and it can then bring that knowledge to all of the different systems it interacts with.
Yeah, I think that'll push. I think it's already there, but I think that'll place a much stronger focus on clients ensuring that systems provide access to the data, but then essentially probably what we will see is clients then start and say, well, look, what kind of machine learning capability do I need to put in place on top of that data set? Yeah. And then the knowledge and reasoning piece, I think this is going to be quite critical. And I think, I mean, we're starting it with source grounding, but essentially this is where you want to contain the language model to have knowledge about your process, your standards, your procedures, in order to basically bind it to your organization. I think without that, you've just got a rogue LMS language model just spurting out stuff that's kind of not, I'm not going to say tuned or fine-tuned, but certainly you want to ground it and give it organizational context of how you want it to behave.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, we were having an interesting conversation before as well about kind of industry level knowledge versus your kind of organizational knowledge. And yeah, I think you were saying we're probably not too far away from kind of industry bodies or kind of governments providing regulations and providing this sort of knowledge in a form that AI can easily understand, so that everyone's kind of own AI agents can kind of take from those kind of public repositories and add it to your own organizational knowledge that your AI has access to.
I think as well, I think that a lot of the providers, let's say a lot of the provider platforms now, they'll connect to, similar to us, what we're OpenAI, Microsoft Azure hosted in the UK. That's the language model we use for AI features. But you can imagine a world where, well, if you've got different platforms all accessing different instances of language models, you mean, hang on, I've got like a haberdashery of models that we're dependent on. And what we've seen is, as we iterate and launch new versions of the model, like going from 3.5 to 4, the behavior changes, significantly. Timing and responding is another thing, but actually the behavior and its response changes. And I think if you don't have control over what language models you want to use and that influence kind of your AI roles, some supplier changes one language model, suddenly the kind of behavior or the decision it starts to make is kind of, hang on, why is it started to do that?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's not. Yeah, because I think generally, the more you use AI, there's a skill to using an AI model. Essentially, the more you use it, the more you kind of learn how it's going to respond to you and how to prompt it to do certain things. And yeah, you're absolutely right. I think as you use specific AI model more, you kind of learn more of its kind of eccentricities. You kind of build up an intuition about how it's going to respond. You almost build up some rapport with it almost. You know how it's going to respond to certain things you say. And yeah, you're absolutely right. If you then switch to use a different model, or the platform you're using changes what AI model it's kind of using in the background, then yeah, it's quite jarring to suddenly, why is it not doing the things it normally does when I give it this prompt? And it's not necessarily that it'll be wrong now. It's just different from what you've become accustomed to, and you now need to relearn all of the specifics about how this new AI model responds to things. So in the world where kind of imagining where you're bringing your own AI model or your organization's AI model to these different platforms, you're bringing that knowledge you have of the AI model you're using with you. So you don't need to relearn how all of these different AI models work. You're not at the whims of whatever.
I think that's it. I think what we'll see is I don't think clients will like to be at the whim of platforms. I think they'll say, look, great that you've got it, but actually what we want you to do is we want your AI features and functionality to run off our language model because we've done exercise and that's our preference. We want you to connect to that. I think that's the big shift for us is in the platform is, okay, well, we need to provide clients the features to be able to change the keys and plug it into any type of AI language model, and then you're kind of independent. I think that's what clients will want. It'll be great, you've got it shared, but actually, no, we want you to be specific, and it's our language model that we want.
Like where one client, where you're using Copilot, we use that for everything, and we as a platform then need to be able to talk to their Copilot. Another client, we're using Claude, we need to be able to talk to their Claude model, and kind of advertise to each of those models, here's how you interact with MetaGrid, here's the features that you can use within MetaGrid. To exactly as you say, to allow everyone to kind of bring their own AI model and all of the knowledge that it brings with it to MetaGrid, rather than the other way around.
I think then that probably brings us on the other kind of human in the loop interface, and that's the bit I think is it's important. It's the hard one to judge, but I think we, as a platform provider, I think we've got to support both kind of operations, which is could you use MetaGrid as the primary interface that people are chatting to and working through, and it's kind of connected to broader agents, but essentially you're providing users a single interface for how they're delivering projects, and it's just connected, but you're interacting with it. There's a kind of thing, yes, that's probably potentially a reality, because if it's MetaGrid is the process engine and it's facilitating the dialogue, maybe it's got 80% of the chat interactions because it's helping you with the process. However, we can't kind of rest our laurels on that, because I still believe there'll be well, actually, no, I don't want MetaGrid to be the primary interface. We want Copilot, or we want some other system to be the primary interface that users are using to interact with AI. And what we just want you to do is that if I'm talking with that primary interface, it can connect to MetaGrid and do stuff within MetaGrid just as much as it could go and do something with Procore or go and do something with CMAR, and it be the kind of single interface. But I think regardless of what you pick, I think what we're going to say is that most clients or most people in most organizations are going to want to try and provide a single interface to AI, rather than I'm talking to this one, I'm talking to that one, I've got to use this system for that one, this one. Then you just, like I said before, you just can get frustrated at the fact that they can't talk with each other, or actually I've got to talk to this one slightly this way and talk to that one slightly this way. It's kind of actually what I need is a kind of single interface that we can provide employees.
And I think, as we sort of said before, the important point as well is an interface to have oversight over what the AI is doing and any decisions it's making and what data it's using, and also to kind of sign off, because there's different categories of risk when it comes to using AI for things, right? There's going to be some fairly low risk things where it's like you're pretty sure the AI is going to get it right, but if it doesn't, it also kind of doesn't matter too much. But then there's going to be some very high risk categories of we absolutely do not want an AI agent just making its own decisions here without very clear, human sign off and verification of where it's got all the data from that it's doing this with. I think there's going to be different levels of that human interface, I think, as well, depending on the risk and how likely it is the AI is going to get things right or wrong.
I think as well, there's the human machine relationship, which is you want the concept of AI as a role, but if the human has to interact with AI and it doesn't feel like it's a single backwards and forwards interaction, it's like, well, you go for that bit for that role, that bit for that role. They'll never kind of trust it or believe that it's kind of core functioning as a role. It's just a haberdashery of collected features that I'm trying to chat and interact with.
Yeah, I think you've just touched on another key point as well there about trust, right? You don't want to just use it. It almost doesn't matter how good AI is or how good these different agents are if people don't trust that it's making those decisions. And yeah, if you're bringing your own AI model to the table that you use for everything else, it's kind of your key interface with all of these different AI systems. And yeah, I definitely think that helps build that trust.
Cool. Right. So for us, I mean, that was just really for us, the kind of reflection point was, look, we can definitely see the evolution of the platform for us moving to kind of intelligent work system, but then recognizing that actually we need to support the evolution from actually that method grid is just part of a kind of ecosystem of a smart, intelligent decisioning system. And we kind of need to work through in the roadmap to build features and functionality that don't put any blockers or bound kind of blockers on that journey. Otherwise, I think if you're kind of a SaaS provider or a platform provider, if you're kind of putting blockers in place that stop clients kind of evolving to AI as a role, I think quite quickly you'll find yourself not really the platform of choice. The next bit, and this is really what we've started building with the team, is okay, well, look, if we were to talk about an AI assistant for capital project delivery, what are all the different types of agents that we think it needs to be able to do and build? And the reason that we're doing this is, well, for us as a business, we kind of have to start working out which kind of features or functionality do we think, which agents could we support and provide, but also I think clients would probably respond. There's a lot of conversation about what AI could do and what it can do, and there's different teams exploring different ideas. What we thought would be useful is, well, actually, let's try and put a framework in place that just kind of helps facilitate the kind of conversations on what you actually want AI to do. Because I think, I'm sure Mark will agree, is once we're kind of clear on what we want AI to be able to do, it then makes it a lot easier to start thinking about, okay, well, how would we construct AI in the code in order to be able to facilitate that transaction? So, I mean, we've kind of, well, maybe I'll go quickly run through these, but these are kind of our initial ideas. Obviously, we can definitely see one around project classification, lifecycle optimization. So, okay, I need to understand about your project. Maybe you classify projects as kind of light, standard, major, or you have different risk classifications, but you want to ensure that people are being consistent in how they classify projects. And that can be really simple. Look, you ask AI, it asks you questions, and based on that interaction, it then basically says, by the way, I think your risk classification X, and here's my justification. So at least then you're getting people to classify projects consistently. Like I said, kind of illustrated before, I think the build on that is great. You've told me I'm risk classification 3, so what? And it's kind of like, well, so what will be, I've now cloned your playbook, or I've cloned your method, and I've tailored it, right-sized it. I've moved you to a 2-stage or a 3-stage process. I've put in the gates, and oh, by the way, because of X, Y, and Z, you need these additional deliverables and controls. And
also drawing on your other projects that it has access to that are in a similar classification of, all of your other projects that are at this certain classification, they all have this feature in, so this is something you'd want to consider putting in.
Yeah,
is what we were talking about before, of that kind of structure that you have and the AI, rather than just making things up off the top of its head, drawing on an existing structure to give these suggestions.
Yeah, I think, the reality of most complex organizations today, there are probably like a whole range of different standards that you say, look, I want you to be able to apply all of these standards to your project. But that's a kind of breadth of knowledge that a user's got to be, like a human's got to be able to kind of work through and read all of it. Whereas if AI's basically got access to it and grounded on it, it's much better to then be informed and conversational dialogue between you. Oh, by the way, this, I've added this, you need to think about that and that and that, and it be relevant based on the kind of conversation about the project. So that definitely we see that one, and I definitely see that one helping kind of more with the dynamic future ways of how we think work will be defined and displayed to users. The assurance and readiness monitoring, I thought this will be, look, are you ready for a gate? Probably works with other agents to kind of assess it, but essentially, okay, you're going for gate 2. Yeah, I've looked at the playbook, I've looked at your plan, I've looked at other kind of deliverables, I've looked at the design, I've had a chat with a design risk intelligent agent, and yeah, by the way, I think you're ready to go through gate 2, or actually, no, this has changed, you haven't seen this, and you don't have that deliverable. I think that kind of assurance and gate kind of monitoring, I think, is going to be a useful agent. Yeah, the design risk intelligence, I think that, again, that's probably more for kind of CDEs, is like, and assessing kind of design integrity, design documentation, design changes, and making sure that the design's coherent, and catching where you're blindsided and being an intelligent agent that's pushing recommendations to you. Change control, impacting forecasting came up a couple of days ago. It's just like, I've got to raise a change. I raised the change in CDE. I then have to go to CMAR, and then I have to wait, and it's kind of, then I have to do the impacts. I was like, well, surely there'll be a kind of more coordinated agent that's helping you with, someone's raised a change, great, I've done the impact assessment, I've looked at a history of changes before, this is what the next steps is, and by the way, I'm integrated into doing CMAR, so I've already done that for you. So definitely we'll see agents in that space. I think the other one,
I think that's, I was going to say, like, that's kind of what we were talking about before, right? About currently, it's the human has to do something to trigger the AI to do a task. Whereas what you're talking about here is, certain AI agents reacting to changes within the state, rather than a human proactively having to go ask them to do something.
Yeah, I think that the forecast confidence agent. So obviously, I think there's going to be ERP accessing P6 or Primavera, and basically, yeah, just assessing the confidence, like how confident are we in particular milestones, and giving us kind of more insight into the schedule and cost performance and value, etc., and bringing that to life for people to think about. Procurement package readiness, again, another one is just, payment, suppliers, managing suppliers, and are we ready for invoicing payments. There'll be one around carbon, whole life of cost assessment, carbon decisions that you're making. The safety intelligence, early warning, we've already seen kind of, again, platforms being built that do that role. Assess all the kind of health and safety data, but rather than it being like independent as a separate platform, I think the natural evolution is, okay, well, how do I get that agent to be helping me assess, looking at my project, looking at the scope of my project, and suggesting kind of hazards, things that haven't been seen, looking at kind of the accidents that have been happening, actually kind of getting to root cause or early warning indicators for potential impacts and projects. Again, so that's
how do you get it to do that proactively as well, right? Without having to go manually into a separate system to kind of look up the relevant information.
And then I think obviously we kind of know knowledge and lessons reuse. We kind of got Leap and kind of already, but again, I think the change here, the change in thinking is less of AI as a feature on a lessons learned database. Oh, great. I can chat with an agent that can go and search records and return it. I think this is much more saying, oh, well, look, how can I look at behavioral detection and work out when I want to try and capture lessons off people. But more importantly, I think, is I know about your project. I know that something's happened on a change. I can see something in the assurance. By the way, I've connected the dots on those three things, and basically I think this lesson is important to you at the point it's happening, rather than just dependent on whether a user's gone in and used the chatbot to interact with it.
Again, proactively kind of either sharing the lesson with you or asking you for a lesson when it's relevant based on what you've been doing, rather than because you've clicked a button saying open up my lessons link.
I think that we were talking about it before, was okay, there's lessons, i.e., we've written down a lesson, but then I think what actually there could be is a new kind of mathematical kind of lessons database, which is, by the way, when AI detects these three agents or these three signals from different agents, I need to push certain recommendations to people, because that's a kind of so I think what we'll see is kind of mathematical pattern-based lessons that we see events from different agents that then go, actually I need to surface that, and that's the bit where I think AI is going to be fantastic at.
Which I mean that's sort of AI bread and butter, right? Is pattern recognition. And exactly as you say, every time in previous projects X, Y, and Z line up, it leads to this consequence. So in this project I'm looking at now, X, Y, and Z has happened. So I need to proactively flag this up and say, you need to be thinking about this risk because of this pattern that the AI has detected.
And then I think like capability, resource coverage. I think we'll start to see one like someone's long-term sick. So what's the impact? What's the impact of my schedule? It being connected to HR systems, it being triggered by that and saying, by the way, this person's now not available on your project. This has been impact. These are what's impacted. I think the other build on that is like it being able to access things like Camere or the competency management system and saying, actually, don't worry about it. I've found 2 or 3 people that are available that can do it, that have the right level of competency. Or actually, it surfaces and saying, actually, you've got a much bigger problem because, this is a big impact to your project. And what we can see from the data is nobody that has the competency or level that's required for your project is available. That's a significant issue that I can't resolve for you. You need to go and have a chat and how we sort that out.
It goes back to the human in the loop interface we were talking about before, right?
Yeah. And then I think that kind of naturally, as agents get access to more project data, you will then get the kind of executive agent, which is, look, tell me which projects I need to worry about, and it being then saying, by the way, I think these are all green, but this one, it's reporting, they say it's green, but actually what we can see in the data is actually it's predicting to fail. So I think there's obviously like project prediction tools already out there in the market, but I think, again, how do you make it all kind of being an all-inclusive integrated role that's helping you do something? And this, I mean, we then sort of start to take that we think is a good framework or a good model to start helping you explore and break down that. Well, firstly, it's really helpful if we can just get everyone on the same page about what we want this AI assistant to be able to do. And I think that's probably in order in building any kind of platform or solution that you want to build, is I kind of have a vision for what I want it to look, and that's kind of shared with people talking about it. For us, we've kind of broken that down just into slightly more granular things just to help us. But what we recognize in all of the things underneath it is, whilst yes, we'll do kind of lessons, capture, delivery, risk detection, knowledge queries, and we're kind of exploring the kind of concept of template dynamics, so drafting documents using AI and then having AI check documents. What we recognize is that we are not going to, we need to work and operate within an integrated system. Like, we'll need to connect data to Bentley, P6, SharePoint, Procore. All those different systems are going to play a role in how we build this agent to be able to work as a role, rather than just a haberdashery of independent individual features. So look, what we started to do is start to basically build some of those agents. We started to build out and profile them, and I think this is kind of a framework that you could use, but we're just being clear about, look, what's the purpose of the agent? What benefits will it provide? What does it do? Like fundamentally, what are the kind of things that we want it to be able to do? What data or systems is it going to need to start to have access to in order to be able to perform those roles? And then I think it's important, like kind of example in action is to start then bringing it to life. And you can definitely kind of whiteboard it or just map it out in terms of like the interaction between the AI and the human, but it's kind of helping you understand, okay, well, what is the interface and interaction that we want with that agent and the human, and what decisions do we want AI to make or recommend, and what kind of dialogue do we want to go backwards and forwards between the agent? And then you're going to have to start thinking about, well, what's the value and what's the priority? Because we don't think this is, we disappear for 6-12 months and then it's working. We see the way that these agents are going to be built, or the way that we build AI as a role, is very much going to be iterative development of, well, we've got it to do this now, we've now got it talking to this agent and going backwards and forwards, and we're happy with it. And that, we feel, is basically how clients are going to kind of evolve and develop their kind of AI as a role feature.
Yeah, I also think, just from, I'll be brief about this, but from a technical point of view, you know, the technologies for how these different AI agents are going to interact with each other, that's kind of evolving as well. You know, the big kind of conversation going on at the minute is kind of MCP, Model Context Protocol, it's called, that's kind of being developed. These big AI companies, I think it was Anthropic who first kind of proposed it, and Google and Microsoft have recently got on board, which is essentially just a technical protocol for how AI agents are going to talk to each other, right? And that's going to be evolving as we do this, as it always does with any kind of new technology. And I think it's going to take a while for that sort of thing to settle as well. And, you know, how do we, because we all collectively, you know, as a society, we kind of need to land on how these AI agents are actually going to talk to each other. You know, how are they going to advertise their features to each other, tell each other what knowledge they can provide, or what features they can offer to each other. But I think that's also going to be part of the conversation from a more sort of technical point of view as well.
Yeah, and I think we can definitely see that whilst client, I think broadly, I mean, like it'll be like AWS and Azure that will provide the infrastructure for clients to be able to construct that intelligent decisioning system. And they'll give them the kind of technical capabilities, and then platforms will need to kind of work and integrate within it. So just to kind of help, we've sort of broken this down and written a paper just that explores the concept. So we break down each of those kind of core components of what we think is going to be needed to help you build AI as a role. But we've also kind of expanded those individual agent services in a bit more depth and detail to kind of give a start for 10. So if you were wanting to try and facilitate kind of sessions and workshops with teams about how do we move from feature to role, what do we want these roles to do, it's kind of pre-written in there, at least as a starting point. And then we've already, I mean, for those that are interested, you know, we've already started to sort of build some of these features in our roadmap. So for example, like source grounding is what we're working on at the moment, which allows you to then control and build libraries of sources of information that help you ground the AI model. And obviously, naturally, this is because you want MethodGrid to reflect the processes and build playbooks that are relevant to your standards and your ways of working. So that's kind of the first iteration, because obviously we want you to be able to kind of meet the need for knowledge and reasoning. But also when we build processes or playbooks, you want the engine to have context of your kind of standards and your sources. And then in terms of the other prototypes we've built, obviously we've got lessons capture, lessons delivery. Mark, I think you're kind of the expert on Leap and kind of how AI does that within the platform.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we need to talk about it like KX.
I've got loads a lot before. Yeah, we've got loads of videos on that one.
Yeah.
But then obviously the other new one is obviously the build and introduction of the AI assistant within the platform. But I think the core use case we've seen as well, because clients put templates in their playbooks to say, look, we want you to use this template as that you use for the PEP or your kind of risk management plan. It's only natural that, well, if we have the template and if we have the kind of knowledge and the quality criteria that people need to meet, essentially then AI can then use that information, have context about the project, and then help work with the user to draft the kind of, work through it kind of section by section and give you a first draft. We were joking around, Mark, weren't we, about the evolution and sort of introduction of language models have probably de-skilled or made it not. We don't really judge people on their ability to write documents and how well they've, used English and language, because essentially now, not that we'll become fully dependent on it, but language models, can do it a lot quicker, a lot more consistent with it, and get us the kind of copy that we want quickly.
Yeah, I mean, I think the skill kind of moves up a level, right? Instead of sort of writing these documents yourself, your people are more in the role of kind of reviewing them and almost sort of an editor role rather than the actual person writing it. So yeah, I mean, I definitely think there's an evolution of what skills are going to be important in the future as these kind of AI become more prominent in every area.
I think the language model is the kind of calculator for maths, isn't it? And
I remember a friend I was at university with when we were talking about kind of AI, and especially around how to talk about in education, and whether or not students are allowed to use AI for doing certain tasks. And he said it reminds him of when we were at school, of teachers always saying, you're not always going to have a calculator in your pocket with you, whereas now, of course, we all do. In the future, in fact, we're already at the point now where we all have AI models in our pockets. All of our phones can, can act as an AI model or interact with an AI model. So yeah, I think it's definitely, there's a shift in what skills are required. Essentially, that you can ask the AI to do stuff, but you still need the skill to get it to do the right things or to judge its output.
Yeah, I think that the critical bit for us on template dynamics is, look, I want to use the language model's capability of structuring and writing like structured English or French if it needs to be. But what's critical is I still need the human. I want the human to be in control of the decisioning, the context. Maybe AI's checked and pushed things that I didn't see and suggested sort of, by the way, you haven't seen X, Y, and Z. Can we chat about that? But essentially you want the human, the expert to be, these are the kind of objectives, this is what I want to say, does it right, go and draft that. I still think we want the human to be the controller, but again, you want AI to be, by the way, you might have forgotten this, or you might have forgotten that, or you haven't covered this, and this section requires us to cover, the quality criteria for this section must to say, we need X, Y, and Z to be articulated. But again, I forgot it. Yeah, add that, please. Add that section in.
Yeah, definitely. I think the other kind of broader point that's important to make here as well is that we're sort of talking about this AI feature here, and we're kind of on the left-hand side of the timeline we started out with. But I think it's important to point that even when we're building these AI features within MethodGrid, we've got an eye on that future of we need to build this in a way where in the future we can easily allow clients to substitute their own AI agent into this process when they're going to want to do that in the future. Initially when we release this feature, it's going to be MethodGrid's AI writing the documents, but we are building it in such a way that the specific AI model that's actually generating the document could be substituted out with a client's own AI model when clients are ready to provide that.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? When we were considering the design for template dynamics, it was like, look, we probably build this as a kind of API connection with a set of screens and interactions between the user, but actually there's probably most clients will be like, oh, do you know what? I totally want that, but I haven't got MethodGrid, but I still really want us to be able to produce like documents, and I want to control how that's done. I want to control the kind of interactions with it. So yeah, I think we'll start to build more kind of accessible services that could be plugged into agents and provide specific features and functionality on that journey.
Yeah. I think it's not, when we talk about the AI as a feature and the kind of intelligent systems, it's not, we can build AI as a feature that will work with these intelligent systems in the future. It's not an either or. It's not, we need to rebuild all of the features once we get to that point. If we can build the features in a way that will work with that future that we're kind of imagining is going to happen.
So yeah, I mean, our kind of sort of reflection, and it's important for us to do it, because obviously this kind of influences our product roadmap and what we want the platform to be able to do. But obviously, we recognize that we need to support you guys, you on the journey towards, we want to kind of build AI as a role, and we don't really want MethodGrid to be a blocker of that. And actually, I think some of the clients were actually helping them build the agents actually within their infrastructure and estate. But for us and MethodGrid, look, we recognize that it's going to be your LLM. You're going to say, look, great, MethodGrid use OpenAI and it's kind of in Azure and we're happy with that. But actually, no, we want you to plug MethodGrid into our language model in our instance. Definitely, it's going to be, look, great, you've got an AI assistant, but actually, how can you make MethodGrid integrated into our AI assistant? Or at least there's no difference in terms of the experience and interaction. We're, going to need to provide data from our platform that, integrates with your data fabric. And you may have kind of machine learning on that, and you may have other agents build on it. Like we talked about, it'll be your knowledge. So again, you'll want to source ground the playbook, the concepts that we have in MethodGrid, that it's based on your standards, your documentation. And I think the other point is, look, it's your IP, but I think there's a kind of new IP, which is how good is your agent? How good are the AI roles that you build? I think will be potentially a differentiator that when you take it to a client and say, look, we're the best in construction and we're best in project delivery, we're the best in cost management, but we've got the best set of agents that can analyze and use your data and support our staff delivering projects and services. So I think the kind of AI roles, I think, will become highly, highly valuable. Just conscious of time, just any questions, if anyone would like to raise any questions or thoughts? Well, Mark, if you keep out of questions, I'll just kind of run through sort of stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Oh, actually, Mark, I'll look out for questions.
Actually,
you want to cover what you've been up to?
Yeah. So just quickly, while we were talking about AI, I thought it'd be good to give a quick update on some of the other AI research projects that we're involved in. And so the kind of big one is this Just Now initiative that we're partnering with Durham University. And it's actually with Durham University's law department. And we've talked about this before. It's kind of it's around the transition to kind of net zero, and where our interest in it comes in. And it's relevant to some of the stuff we've been talking about today. Is one of the kind of outputs from it is this AI-based compliance control system. And them being the law department, their focus is kind of on when countries have these big international agreements, like the Paris agreements, say, from climate change, using AI to ensure that a country's laws are compliant with those agreements. And then the step further on, which is where we kind of come in, and our interest for our clients is the step further on from that. Internally, as an organization, when you're making your policies or your project plans, using this same AI compliance system to check that your policies conform to all the regulations and the laws that they should be conforming to, essentially. It's a very big kind of wide scope project, but there'll be more updates on that and we'll share updates on that as they kind of come out. And then there's a couple. I'm not going to get into everything else because there's quite a lot of technical research involved in about the maths that goes on inside an AI model when it's doing various things. But that's a picture of me in Canada. I was there a couple of weeks ago talking about some of the AI research we were doing, which I think, as ever with these things, there's the technical aspect of the research, but then there's also just the being actively engaged with the kind of AI research community, and kind of and where we can collaborate with people is always the important thing.
I think it's a lot of AI still in academia, so it's just making sure you stay connected to that, and we support it.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool. Just to wrap up, because I'm conscious of time, very, very quickly. Look, we're doing the future of work and AI, and this is just a preliminary kind of launch for this and the kind of topics that we're going to cover. But we have the event in July in Bath, and that's the kind of face-to-face with all our clients. Please reach out if you're interested and you would like to kind of come. Please just, I think, Tom, if you put your details on there, just reach out to Tom if you'd like a place to come along, and we'll just allocate a spot if they're available. And then there's quite a few events that we're at July. So we're at Digital Construction Week next week. So if you're around, please come and see us. The week after, at the APM conference on project and sustainability, and at the same time, we're at the House of PMO in London. There won't be a GRIDtalk sort of topic based, but normally when we do events, we normally run a kind of product demo. So we're doing that on the 12th of June. So if you're available, then please come and join that session. And then, like I said, if you're interested and want to explore the topic of future of work and AI and want to do that face to face, we're going to try and build some more prototypes, and we'll be reaching out to you. I think most of you should have received your invite, but if you'd like an invite, please contact Tom. Lovely. Conscious, I'm 1 minute over, but Mark, thank you so much for your time, and guys, thank you very much for joining us, and yeah, hope to see you soon. Take care.
Bye.